We start this podcast series with a subject that has afflicted employees for a very long time, the imposter syndrome. The imposter syndrome is a psychological pattern in which individuals doubt their accomplishments and have a persistent fear of being called out as frauds. In fact, a Forbes study shows that 75% of the women experience imposter syndrome as compared to 63% of the male employees. To shed light on this topic, we have Malati Vasudeva, our lead facilitator at Syngrity. Welcome, Malati. Malati has been a very close friend, and we started working where I was her client, and then over a period of time we graduated to she being associated with us as a lead facilitator. Welcome, Malati. Malati, why don't you introduce yourself to us? Tell us a little bit about your background and your work experience.
So I'm an HR professional with about 28 years of experience, a background in psychology, about 25 years in the industry. My last role was the Chief Learning Officer of a large IT organization. And about 4 years ago, I realized that my passion lies in the space of learning and development, talent management, and basically enabling professionals. And that's where I decided to start out on my own, and that's where we started collaborating at Syngrity. Yes, so that's what I've done for the last 4 years.
Thanks a lot, and it's actually been a pleasure being associated with you for the last 4 years in the workspace. So, tell us, what is this imposter syndrome? And we understand that it affects all genders, but why is it more prevalent amongst women?
So like Vikram, when you were introducing the series, like you mentioned, that imposter syndrome is a psychological pattern that makes you feel like a fraud. It makes you feel lesser about your own self. And it does exist across genders, and it's gender agnostic.
Yeah.
But it's certainly more prevalent in women. And at least in an Indian context, and I do know that it's also agnostic of the various cultures. But especially in the Indian context, when I look back, what did one grow up with? Oh, you're so lucky that your parents are educating you. And then you get married, oh, you're so lucky that your husband allows you to work, or your in-laws are supportive of you, or they are pitching in with your household work. And then you go to a workspace where there are enough and more male colleagues who are, and I'm not doubting their intent, but they are almost patronizing, and they'll say that, we will ensure that you grow in your career, or we will make way for you. So very subconsciously and unconsciously, just imagine what's happening to you, right? You're thinking, I'm so lucky, I'm so indebted. And when do you get that feeling? When you feel that you're not capable enough, and yet you're getting all of this, you know? So to answer your question, why is imposter more prevalent amongst women? I think it's very deep-rooted patriarchy. It's conditioning. It's the stereotypes that we live with, and I'm really not here male bashing, I think we are all part of a system.
Yes.
Where we just grow up with such deep-rooted patriarchy that I don't think that their intent is to make you feel smaller, but you just know that's what you know. That's how you've grown up with, and very unconsciously you will say, I'll help you. Yeah. Like recently I met somebody in a conference, and this lady came from a very small town, and she said, I'm going to learn, I decided that I learn driving, I'm going to, learn how to dress up and live in a city. And yet she said, every time I go out, or, every time I step out, my brothers are with me.
Yeah.
So how else will you, there's no way that you will not have the imposter if you've grown up in a system like this.
Yeah. The parallel that I can draw with it is compassionate colonialism. Mm-hmm. Pretty much how the world was colonized, mm-hmm. and saying, oh, we have arrived and you don't know enough, mm-hmm. and let us help you.
Yes.
And then you just start doubting yourself.
Right.
Malati, share a personal experience with us where you have experienced the imposter syndrome.
Well,
I know it's. I'm asking you to share something personal.
not really. I mean, I think I'm very happy to share the fact that I almost suffer from imposter on an everyday basis. You know, I'll see someone who can, who I feel, let's say, has gone to an Ivy League college, right? It'll kick in. You know, it triggers me. I feel, oh, you know, I didn't go to an Ivy League college, so this person has to know more than me. So very quickly, when I see people with more attributes, professional or personal, I'm very quick to say I'm not good enough. So it surfaces very regularly, and one has to be conscious to say that what are the strengths that I have? What do I bring to the table to kind of overcome it, you know, on an everyday basis? But one of the examples that I'd like to share here is that when I was made the Chief Learning Officer of a large IT company, I felt so lucky. I said, oh my God, you know, the universe is so kind, it happened to me. I did not for once think about, I must have done something right to get there. And then when I would sit in a room full of CXOs and largely male, I would almost want to hide myself and say, I don't want to be seen, I don't want to be heard. I mean, I should just say quietly, they perhaps know better than me, they have more business knowledge than me. Okay, I mean, in retrospect, I think that, okay, someone has more business knowledge, but someone has more ability to work better with a team or grow their team. So all of us have different skills. And I think by the time I discovered that there is a phenomena called imposter, and perhaps that's what I need to deal with, it was a bit too late. Having said that, better late than never.
Okay. In the last 25 years, you were in the industry, and in the last 4 years, you have run multiple workshops and led discussions around the imposter syndrome. What does imposter syndrome in the workplace look like?
So, in my multiple interactions with women across industry, while addressing the imposter syndrome, one of my discoveries is that the more successful you are as a woman, the more likely are you to suffer from imposter syndrome.
So interesting.
Yes, and that's validated by the fact that there's a very well-renowned psychologist, Dr. Valerie Young, who's written a book called The Secret Thoughts of Successful Women, and it's about the imposter syndrome and how it manifests itself in the organizations, and how does it just manifest itself. So I think if you have the imposter, you will either try to be the perfectionist, or you would say, okay, I'm going to do all of this myself. You're very hesitant to seek help, because seeking help in your mind is perceived as a sign of weakness. Or you want
and
to...
you burn out.
And yes, and in no matter what form it manifests, you're absolutely right. You're just burning yourself out unnecessarily. So whether you're trying to be a perfectionist or a soloist, or you're trying to be the expert, you feel that if I don't know everything about a subject, I'm lesser than the other. You're just unnecessarily trying to be a superhuman being, which is actually not possible. So it manifests itself in all these ways.
Okay. Malati, what can be done to alleviate this feeling of being an imposter? What are some practical tips?
Right. So I think one of the things to do is and especially women, don't credit themselves for all the accomplishments they have. You know, we just keep doing things. We just, you know, from home to work, and I think the amount we juggle with, the amount we are able to handle is tremendous. Yet, I don't think we give ourselves a pat on the back. We don't look back at our accomplishments. We don't talk about our accomplishments at workplace. I mean, how many women would you meet who would say, oh, you know, I've done this and I've done that and I was responsible for this. They're so happy. We are so happy to give credit to other people. So I think to answer your question, it's really important to reflect back on all your accomplishments and what might have led to those accomplishments. That's very important because those are our strengths. And at a time when you're feeling down and out and you feel that the imposter is creeping in, that's the time when you need to draw on those strengths and say, well, I have it in me to do this. You know, like overcoming imposter syndrome can range from just body language, and you know, like Anika D does a lot of videos on postures and body language and how you need to feel bigger and, you know, larger before you go into a meeting where you think you're going to not feel confident. So from small tips like that to having a role model who you can look up to having support groups, to also sharpening your own saw in the sense that being sure that you're professionally developed so that you feel confident about yourself. So there are many strategies available to overcome imposter syndrome. I think the starting point is to recognize that you are, for a lack of a better word, suffering from one. And then the next steps, and different strategies work for different people.
Tell me something, do you think organizations need to play a role in eliminating the imposter syndrome or addressing the imposter syndrome in their employees?
Absolutely. I think a lot of organizations today are investing tremendously in women in leadership programs and are imparting a lot of skills that are important for leadership. Those are competencies that leaders need agnostic of gender. There are not many organizations who are looking at saying that not too many organizations that are wearing the gender lens and looking at it a little differently and saying what do women need in addition to these competencies. And I think what women do need is to have a leader identity. What kind of a leader am I? I think as women, we know what kind of a daughter we want to be, what kind of a mother we want to be, or what kind of a partner we want to be, but we don't think about our leader identity. And that happens because we stumble upon leadership roles. I don't think most of us, at least this generation, didn't plan that I'm going to become a leader of an organization. For me, for sure, I never thought I'd become a chief learning officer. I just would show up, do my work well, and then things kept happening to me, right?
Sure.
So as a result, when I reached there, and when I look back now, I realize I had the imposter syndrome. And perhaps I didn't need so many competencies as I needed addressing this unconscious, this little monkey that always brought me down.
Yeah. No, thanks Malati, thanks for this. Syngrity offers an array of programs across the DEI-B spectrum, and for entry-level women we have She Aspires, for mid-level women we have She Inspires, for executive-level women we have She Leads, and for the entire ecosystem to be able to address unconscious biases and to create an ecosystem of allyship, we have a very unique intervention using theatre called We Lead. And Malati has a fantastic 3-hour module on imposter syndrome. Tell us about it.
Yes, thanks Vikram. So this module on imposter syndrome really talks about first recognizing that do you have the imposter syndrome, and for all the workshops that I've done, I would have come across maybe 0.5% of the participants who said we don't, and which is great. But most people would say they have it. And then what are some of the signs? How do you recognize that you have it? Or how does it manifest itself? And then finally, how you address it. And like we said, that I think what really distinguishes us from other work around DEI is that we really go into talking about what are some of those unconscious or subconscious beliefs about ourselves, limiting beliefs that we are unable to conquer. And then we also go on in helping participants to build a leadership narrative or a professional narrative, so that at least I know what do I want to be known for as a professional or as a leader, and then I can create a professional development or a leader development plan for myself. And that's what we do in a 3-hour workshop.
Great. Thank you so much, Malati. Every time we've had a conversation in the last 4 years and before that, it's been funny, it's been enriching, and there's always been a takeaway. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Vikram. It was a pleasure being here.